Live from Belfast, I'm Declan Harvey, and these are the main stories this evening from across Northern Ireland. The First Minister, Michelle O'Neill, defends her decision-making during the pandemic after damning criticism of the Stormont executive in yesterday's COVID inquiry
I can tell you
report.
that at a time whenever we faced an unprecedented global crisis, that I did everything to get our society through this, and through that time. It was a harrowing time for many people, not least all those families that lost a loved one.
A woman whose father died from COVID says politicians should be hanging their heads in shame.
There were families forced to die alone, grieve alone, and families that have never recovered. There are empty chairs at the table.
Later, we'll be talking live in the studio to the new Irish Language Commissioner, Paul Deeds. An inquest continues into the death of a woman struck by a wheel that fell off a lorry. Scenes we don't see often in the Stormont Assembly as the Disabled People's Parliament meets.
Ireland's rugby players prepared to face the world champion South Africa in their final autumn international tomorrow. We'll have a report from Dublin ahead of the big game.
And temperatures last night fell to -6 degrees. Will it be as cool tonight? I'll have the details shortly.
Hello there. Michelle O'Neill has said she will learn lessons from the findings of the COVID-19 inquiry, which yesterday published scathing criticisms of how executive ministers were acting behind the scenes during the pandemic. Take a look at this. It's worth reminding ourselves who those 10 ministers were as the pandemic began to take grip in March 2020. Michelle O'Neill was Deputy First Minister at the time and Arlene Foster First Minister. But these were the other 8 ministers they were leading around the executive. Now, yesterday, the chair of the COVID-19 inquiry said that decision-making in Northern Ireland was chaotic. And up at Stormont, she said that executive meetings were deeply divided along political lines. In her report, Baroness Hallett commented that the attendance of the then Deputy First Minister at the funeral of Bobby Storey contributed to tensions. On the other hand, she also accused the then First Minister Arlene Foster of the inappropriate instigation of cross-community votes to make political points. Perhaps encapsulating it all, the report concluded that some political leaders were not always able to set aside political and sectarian divisions. So, how have local politicians been defending themselves in the face of such criticism? Here's our political correspondent, Gareth Gordon.
After the brickbats, the bouquet. Today was easier for the First Minister, opening a special school alongside Snow Patrol guitarist Johnny McDaid. But even here, there was no escaping the judgment of Baroness Hallett.
Decision-making in Northern Ireland during this period was chaotic and marred by politicisation.
And more questions about Bobby Storey's funeral.
I can tell you that at a time whenever we faced an unprecedented global crisis, that I did everything to get our society through this, and through that time. It was a harrowing time for many people, not least all those families that lost a loved one. It was one of the most challenging times, certainly in my political career, in terms of being a decision maker, rocking a hard place decisions day after day. But of course we have to reflect, and of course there's things we could have done better, and of course we have to take on board the lessons to be learned. I've spoken about this on numerous occasions, including to the inquiry itself. Was very, very mindful, and always have been, in terms of all those people that lost a loved one and how my actions would have caused them even more harm and hurt, and I regret that, of course.
As for the former First Minister Arlene Foster, who'd had a bruising time at the COVID inquiry, she did not respond today when asked to comment. But amid the fallout, her former party was accused by the Ulster Unionists of being largely driven by political opportunism and seeking to create division within the executive rather than focusing on the collective challenge.
Pot, kettle and black comes to mind. I mean, this is an opportunity that Robin Swan and the Ulster Unions have taken to have a swipe at the DUP. Let's take a little bit of time, Mark. Let's consider it. Let's make sure that if such a thing, and God forbid that it would ever happen again, that we actually are well prepared, that we have a considered response.
The then DUP Agriculture Minister Edwin Poots today stood by his controversial claim of higher COVID transmission rates in nationalist areas than unionist ones, despite being criticised in the report, pointing out he wasn't asked about the issue when giving evidence. He told the BBC, "Had that occurred, I would have provided the statistical evidence provided to the executive, which provided the breakdown of new COVID transmission by council area. The facts would have been easily obtainable by the inquiry had they looked for them." But then a general failure to accept criticism was not confined to any one party.
It would be helpful if she, and indeed the ex-First Minister Arlene Foster, who is found to have made specific failings in terms of politicising cross-community votes on public health measures, if they would acknowledge the specific criticisms rather than the generic ones. I think part of the challenge with the First Minister is talking in broad, generic platitudes.
We're left with the what-if question. What if, or even when, it happens again? Would the executive response be any better? It's a very big question indeed. Gareth Gordon, BBC Newsline, Stormont.
Well, lots of people have had thoughts on the findings of yesterday's report, not least those who were working in the health service and those who were relying on it. Here's our health reporter, Aileen Moyna.
Daddy was just a big bundle of love. He was 67. He was a recently retired school teacher and a musician. He gave the best hugs in the world. He was needed. He was loved. He wasn't a statistic.
Katrina Miles's dad, Jerry McLarnon, died alone in Antrim Hospital during a COVID-19 lockdown 5 years ago. Just some of the people impacted by decisions made by Northern Ireland's politicians.
I think they should hang their heads in shame, because whilst they were point scoring round the table, there were families sitting at home waiting for a phone call that maybe never came. There were families forced to die alone, grieve alone, and families that have never recovered. Sometimes our group have been made feel that we have been apportioning blame wrongly, but Lady Hallett has read the evidence, and she has called out the executive for failing all of Northern Ireland.
What was the impact on those working on the front line?
The thing that immediately sprung to mind for me was the lead into Christmas 2020, and that was probably the most chaotic time. I think it's well referenced in the report, where we seemed to go in and out of lockdown, and there was a lot of indecision and so on at the time. And actually, I remember at the time the department phoning me and saying they're not listening to us.
I was very conscious of staff actually feeling very, very scared and frightened of what was happening. If you are nursing or a medic or an AHP and you're dealing with this, you're worried about taking that home to your children, etc. So a lot of fear going on here as well. My worry is that, we want to see action around all of this, and I'm not terribly sure if there's going to be that much action.
While so much of what happened was too little, too late, the families affected want lessons to be learned.
Ultimately, there's nothing we can do for our loved ones, only remember them. But what we can do is try to force the executive and the powers that be to effect change, so that when the next pandemic hits, not if the next pandemic hits, that our children and our children's children will be in a better position than we were in 2020.
Next tonight, it follows decades of campaigning, political arguments, a Stormont collapse and marches on the streets. But Northern Ireland's new Irish Language Commissioner is now in post. Paul Deeds has said he is taking up the role when the conversations about the language are particularly toxic. He's with us live on the programme. But before we meet him, our correspondent Robbie Meredith looks back on what has led to his appointment.
It's a long time since residents on Belfast's Ormeau Road had to put up their own street signs in Irish. But even many years later, the Irish language and how it was used were at the centre of political division.
Curry my yoghurt, can Coca-Cola.
Well, if it's anything to go by what you just did, we don't need a strategy for pure ignorance.
A DUP Agriculture Minister also ordered the Irish nameplate on a fisheries inspection boat to be replaced with the name in English. Paul Given's withdrawal of funding from an Irish language bursary scheme when he was Communities Minister in 2016 was a big factor in the subsequent collapse of the Stormont executive. Though more recently as Education Minister, he has made efforts to build bridges with Irish speakers.
Seal tree.
Gaeilge.
It was the New Decade New Approach Agreement which restored Stormont, which paved the way for commissioners for the Irish language and Ulster Scots and Ulster British tradition. 5 years on, they're finally in post. But as a row and legal challenge over bilingual signage at Belfast Grand Central Station shows, the potential for controversy hasn't gone away. It's now Paul Deed's job to navigate that as Northern Ireland's first Irish language commissioner. He says he wants to work with the language's unionist and loyalist critics. The Commissioner's powers could range widely, ensuring language standards are met in the courts, Stormont and other public services. So taking the job is just the start of the journey. Robbie Meredith, BBC Newsline.
And Paul Deeds is here with us live. We're really grateful for you coming in. Thank you so much. Pick up on a theme there in Robbie's piece. How big a job do you have on your hands to win the hearts and minds of people in unionist communities?
Well, it's pretty huge. It's a huge job in itself anyway. It's going to be quite a challenge to win the hearts and minds of people across the community. And hostility towards the Irish language and ignorance about the Irish language does not come solely from the PUL. It's not the preserve of the PUL community. It's right across the community. So, yeah, I have a job of work to do there to try and dispel a lot of the myths around the Irish language. And I will do my best to do that. It's not necessarily central to the role of the Irish Language Commissioner. It's an oversight role. I'm here to implement the parts of the Identity and Language Act that relate to the Irish language. But I will do my best to try and help bring people with me, especially people in the local authorities and in the public authorities who are the real focus of my work.
How many Irish language speakers are there in Northern Ireland?
There's 7,000 children in Irish medium education, so that gives you an idea of the scale of the growth of the language in recent times. So it is quite huge. There's a massive community out there who have big expectations. They've been waiting for a number of years to have their rights recognised. They've marched on the streets several times to have their rights and their needs met. So there's a big expectation there as well. I'll do my best to meet that. But again, the focus of my work is really looking at how the Irish language is represented within the state and in the public service, and that has to be the focus of my work. So I'll be trying to work with the Irish language community, trying to work with all communities, but the focus of my work is the public authorities, and that's what the Act is about.
You've been doing lots of talking today. Lots of people have questions for you. Earlier it came up that you're not a fan of kneecap, and that has struck people as surprising, rightly or wrongly, I don't know, but why not?
Well, I don't want to say too much about kneecap, and I understand I did get into it earlier on, but I don't really want to go there too much again. I'm not a fan. It's just the opposite of the way that I would seek to do my business. I like to...
But be more specific. What
what
is wrong with how they're doing their business?
I like to build relationships. I like to reach out to people who maybe don't come from a community that has a lot of experience with the Irish language. And I think
find them divisive? I
do to an extent. And I think to do what I want to do and what I've always done throughout my career, I think to do that you need to try and be as inclusive about how you go about promoting the Irish language as possible. And I don't think they do that very well, but I'm not a fan.
Have they made your job harder?
Possibly. That's the reality of it. I've spoken to a number of people in, for example, the PEL community who are quite uncomfortable with some of the things that they do and say. But that's just what it is. I mean, the real challenge is dealing with hostility within our media, to an extent, hostility within our political institutions and among some of our political leaders. And that's the hostility I think we really need to focus on.
How does the hostility, as you describe it in the media, present itself in your view?
Well, I think, unfortunately, a number of the more extreme voices, a number of the more intolerant voices who, for whatever ideological reasons, are opposed to the Irish language have, I think, been amplified quite a lot in recent years and in recent months and weeks. And I think that's unfortunate, and that certainly hasn't made my job any easier. But again, I want to try and get past all of that and get over all of that and work with people as much as possible.
But you will accept that there are people who aren't on the media who have very strong feelings, very deep concerns about this area.
Absolutely. And I've worked with many of them. I've worked with many of them throughout the 22 years I've been working in the Irish medium sector. So I know how to work with people. I'm looking forward to continue to hold out the hand of friendship and build bridges to try and get my work done. So I accept completely and understand that there are genuine misperceptions about the Irish language and fears, and I want to try and help people get over those.
2 quick final questions, if you don't mind. Dual language signs. We know that somewhere like Belfast, residents of a street, only 15% of them need to back dual language signs, bilingual signs, in order for them to be put up. Lots of people think that is absurdly low, that percentage, in order to speak for an entire street. What do you say to them?
Well, the UN certainly doesn't think it's very low. They recommend between 5 and 20%. The advisory panel for the Framework Convention for the Protection of National Minorities, they don't think it's very low. In fact, they thought the 2/3 majority was a disproportionate obstacle that was demonstrably prohibitive and had a dissuasive effect on people belonging to national minorities exercising their rights. So that's pretty strong language, and that comes from the international experts, not from myself.
And just finally, I know you're not going to get involved in the legal action around Grand Central Station and bilingual signs there, but can you describe in your view how it's been handled by our politicians?
I think it could have been handled a lot better. I think part of the reason, to be fair to them, is they, like a lot of the public bodies I've been working with over the last couple of years in my role with Forest na Gaeilge, they have been waiting for the Commissioner to be in place to do a lot of that work for them. But we can just see that some of the damage that's been done by our political leaders not taking the initiative and getting these things done when they should have been done under the obligations that the UK government already has with the European Charter.
Paul, we're really grateful for you coming in. That's Paul Leeds, the new Irish Language Commissioner. Thank you so much. We move on this evening. An inquest's been hearing more details about what led to the death of a woman killed when a wheel fell off a lorry and struck her family car. Shauna McDevitt was travelling home when the accident happened near Toonbridge. Here's our North West reporter, Kieran Tourish.
47-year-old Shauna McDevitt died in what has been described as a tragic freak accident near Toonbridge on April the 10th, 2022. That evening she was returning home to Derry after a Little Mix concert with her 10-year-old son. A wheel came off a lorry travelling on the opposite side of the road. It moved through the air at speed across the carriageway, hitting the family car her partner was driving. She died from serious head injuries virtually instantaneously after the roof collapsed inwards. Their young son was shard with glass in the back seat, where their family dog was strapped in. Her partner, Declan Campbell, had told the inquest that their son had asked how the best day of his life had turned into his worst. The Donegal-based haulage company had its licence removed by the Minister for Transport in the Republic. Its director, Ivor Riley, seen here on the left, along with driver Mark Atkinson, were fined more than £5,000 for defects on the vehicle at a previous court in Antrim last year. The driver of the vehicle, Mark Atkinson, was interviewed by police. He told them he had no knowledge of the accident and hadn't heard any noise. He said he was devastated, and it was so sad for the family. It's just dreadful, dreadful. A forensic scientist said the direct cause of the accident was due to a bearing failure, which led to the wheel falling off the tanker. The inquest was adjourned and is likely to resume next year. Kieran Tourish, BBC Newsline, Coleraine.
We've been following the employment tribunal of a former staff member against Belfast Film Festival. Sarah Morrison is claiming constructive dismissal. She says she was forced out of her job essentially because of how she was treated once bosses learned of her views on sex and gender. Today, lawyers for the festival said Miss Morrison had jumped when she didn't have to. Our reporter Lindsay Telford was listening to the final day of evidence.
It's Sarah Morrison's view that people can't change their biological sex. She took part in this rally back in 2023, but her attendance sparked complaints from the LGBT community, and the Belfast Film Festival launched an investigation. She went off sick and subsequently resigned. Today, her barrister said the film festival failed to distinguish between Ms. Morrison's views and transphobia. She said it was their perception of her beliefs that led to the investigation. The film festival claims it was concerned about its reputation and that its partnerships with various groups could be damaged. But Ms Morrison's barrister rejected this, saying it wasn't a good enough answer or justification for punishing the claimant for manifesting her political opinion. In his closing submission, a barrister for the film festival said the investigation was a mutual exercise that could have exonerated the claimant. He said she jumped when she didn't have to. He repeated claims that the organisation was a broad church and staff members were entitled to their views. The tribunal panel is to consider all the evidence it's heard over the last 2 weeks. It isn't expected to return a judgment this side of Christmas. Lindsay Telford, BBC Newsline.
Now, there were unusual scenes in the Stormont chamber this afternoon. Everyone was agreeing. There was even a round of applause at the end. It was a meeting of the Disabled People's Parliament. Some executive ministers attended. Our community correspondent Mark Simpson was there too.
Smiles at Stormont. Polite exchanges.
And thank you, Keela, for your wonderful contribution.
Even some jokes.
Thank you.
It all happened during a serious discussion inside and outside the Assembly chamber about making sure people with disabilities have more input into government decision making. What changes would you like to see?
Letting disabled people have a chance to, give their opinions on things, and we can bring a lot of light to situations and insight to things that people might not think about.
Caleb from Lisburn has complex special needs. He also has ambition.
I'm 17 years old. When I get older, I want to be an inventor.
And he wants politicians to help him and others achieve their dreams.
My question is, will you?
He was told a new disability strategy is coming soon.
I can guarantee you today that this will not simply be a wish list. It will contain substantive actions that will make a real difference.
The discussion began and ended on a positive note. Mark Simpson, BBC Newsline.
And important discussions at that. Now we turn to sport, and the Rugby Autumn Internationals end this weekend with an exciting game for Ireland. Here's Stephen Watson. Hello.
Yes, Declan, it doesn't get much bigger than the visit of the World Cup holders. South Africa are in Dublin for tomorrow night's game at the Aviva Stadium. Ireland were beaten in their first international match this November to the All Blacks, New Zealand, but bounced back with impressive wins against Japan and Australia. Now Andy Farrell's side end their autumn schedule by testing themselves against the best side in the world right now. Gavin Andrews reports.
A focused Ireland are ready for the Springboks. They've been steadily improving over the autumn series, and it's all been building to this.
I think it's been sort of a mixed campaign. We definitely started poorly against New Zealand, and then we were much better against Japan, better again against Australia. So for us this weekend, it's just about putting it all together. It's going to need definitely our most complete performance yet. South Africa are a team that challenge you in every part of the game, in the air, on the ground. They're the best team in the world.
There's definitely a rivalry there. There's a strong understanding of how we both want to play the game. We've had some good results. They've beaten us over there as well in 2024, so lads are very excited about it.
The visit of the world champions is always a special week for the players, present and past.
We have a good record. I think it's 4 wins out of the last 5 against South Africa, and it would be a brilliant scalp against the world number 1. There's something about this team and these young crop of players that are coming through. Yes, we have experience as well, but I firmly believe, and a lot of Irish fans will be there believing that Ireland can get the win.
As for the tourists, this fixture is one of the highlights of their year.
The nature of the game between us and them, they probably almost go to the last minute of the game. When we played here, always nice and tight. I think that's good for the game. It's actually what rugby needs, So, yeah, it's going to be a tough game, world-class team, but we'll do everything in our powers to make sure that we keep making our people back in South Africa proud.
So pride is on the line at the Aviva, and for both sides 2 years out from the World Cup, it's a real chance to see exactly where they stand. Gavin Andrews, BBC Newsline, Dublin.
Yeah, it's good to see Ulster Stephen Ferris going into the Hall of Fame there today. Now, Ireland cricket's test match against Bangladesh today was interrupted by an earthquake. Ireland trailed by 367 runs after day 3 after being bowled out for 275 in Mirpur. Play was interrupted during the morning session when tremors were felt from the 5.5 magnitude earthquake in the region. The players and umpires gathered on the pitch for a few minutes before play could resume. In Gaelic games, the Senior Club Football Championship has reached the semi-final stage. Kilcoo of Down take on Fermanagh champions Erne Gales tomorrow night, while on Sunday, Monaghan winners Scottstown meet the Derry champions Newbridge.
Scottstown's just going to be a complete different animal again. Look, yeah, like them boys are littered with county players, like, and each lane have a few, like, so, and then underage as well. So, look, it's going to be a complete different test. But look, we'll relish it, like, and look, we have plenty of really, really big, heavy hitters in Derry too, like Slanahill, Glen, Marfelt. They're no small fish either. Like, so, look, we'll go into the game with plenty of confidence, but we do appreciate that Scottstown are a serious team, and we look forward to it.
And finally, a reminder, we have live Irish Premiership football for you tonight. Glentoran and Dungannon Swifts from the Oval is on the BBC iPlayer and the BBC Sport website and app. 7:30, the coverage starts there tonight, Declan.
Stephen, thank you very much. A golden start in Derry Trasna this morning, notwithstanding the frost all over the ground. Derry Trasna, foot of Lough Neagh. What's your forecast going to do for people's weekend plans, Dara?
The good news, it's not going to be as chilly, but it is going to be unsettled at times, I'm afraid. Yeah, it's already unsettled out there. We have quite a bit of rain moving eastwards. So tonight won't be quite as chilly. Last night, the coldest night of the season so far, -6 degrees in Kingsbridge, where this photograph was taken this morning. I'm not too sure if the dog is happy about that or not, but thank you to our weather watchers for sending that in. It's not going to be anywhere near as cold as that tonight, I'm glad to say. We have outbreaks of rain though to get through tonight. Some will be heavy, slightly milder air following behind. So we're looking at lows falling to about maybe 3 or 4 degrees generally, and there could be some fog forming and the odd spot of frost by tomorrow morning before sunrise as well. But otherwise, tomorrow, the better day of the weekend, we're expecting plenty of dry weather and sunny spells to come and go. Won't be as cold as well. 1 or 2 showers dotted around, especially towards the north coast and parts of the west. Drier, sunnier elsewhere, and across the island largely dry, but it's this area towards the southwest, more unsettled conditions, and that is gradually going to nudge our way tomorrow night. But before then, plenty of dry weather through Saturday, some spells of sunshine, and temperatures this time reaching about 9, possibly 10 degrees. That's closer to average for the time of year. Out and about tomorrow evening, there will be some patchy rain at first. The heaviest of the rain, though, isn't expected until the early hours of Sunday morning. Some torrential downpours and the winds picking up as well. So it is going to be a much more unsettled feel, I'm afraid, on Sunday. Low pressure just towards the north of us, bringing outbreaks of rain, some windier conditions too. So it's a case of keeping the umbrellas handy through the day on Sunday. It will be patchy at times. There will be some dry gaps, but I think if you plan for the rain, you'll be grand. Otherwise, in the rain, temperatures reaching 8 or 9 degrees, but it may feel a little bit cooler than that. So Saturday, the best day.
OK, Bar, thank you very much. And that's BBC Newsline this Friday. Something for the weekend, the latest episodes of the State of Us podcast that dives through some of the week's biggest stories for you. BBC Sounds. Check it out. We'll be back here Monday, 6:30. Bye-bye.